Summoning a friend, or stranger, to play co-op is quite complicated. To start, you both need to use unique multiplayer-specific items that are not the same item. The person who wants to summon someone into their world should wait for that player to activate a tarnished furled finger, which is an item you get near the start of the game, and has unlimited uses. Using this will leave a gold summoning sign that the other player can activate once using their required item and assuming you are both located in the same place. Pro tip, doing this process next to a summoning pool will greatly increase its likelihood of completing successfully. The other player needs a fur-calling finger remedy, which is a consumable item and must be found, purchased, or crafted. You and players that want to co-op together should use the multiplayer menu to set a password to make sure that only their summoning sign appears. The player who is requesting help must also have a boss in the area they haven't defeated. The generic point of co-op in Elden Ring is to have other players assist you in defeating a tough boss that you can't beat alone. Note that after summoning a cooperative player, you will no longer be able to use Spirit Ashes until resetting at a site of grace or defeating the intended boss. Because the goal is centered around specific bosses, people are often summoned in enclosed spaces like castles or caves, and less frequently in the vast open world. Consequently, there are a lot of things you cannot do when summoning a cooperator, such as fast travel or mount. While all of this makes sense in the context of what the game designed co-op to do, it severely limits the overall total gameplay you can experience in co-op. While you can kind of trick the system by summoning a friend near an open world boss and then heading in the opposite direction, neither of you will be able to use your mount, and neither of you will be able to enter an enclosed structure like a cave or castle without first severing the co-op connection and restarting it once the main player advances past the entrance of that cave or castle. This makes open world exploration with a friend slow and tedious. Before moving on to perhaps the most inexplicably frustrating part of co-op, let me start by saying I wish From Software didn't limit their view of co-op to be tied to specific bosses. While I'm sure it would have involved extra effort to support, I think being able to freely explore the entire open world with a friend, along with all the tools and functionality, would have been incredible. While co-op makes the game easier than playing solo, I wish they would have taken the approach of other games, where enemy life, damage, etc. is scaled with the number of cooperative players. This again is complicated and doesn't quite work one-to-one, as tactics like distracting and backstabbing are unique advantages that go beyond base numbers, but disabling features like summoning Spirit Ashes in co-op could have helped compensate and led to a truly awesome co-op experience. My personal desires aside, the last element of co-op I have to cover are invasions. Invasions occur when solo enemy players use a unique multiplayer item that allows them to invade another player's world. The goal of an invasion is to kill the host of that world. Once invaded, the host cannot progress until either the invader or they have been killed. By summoning a friend to play co-op, you automatically enable potential invasions by enemy solo players. You cannot opt out of this function. Let me repeat that one more time. When playing co-op, you cannot opt out of having a stranger invade your world and try to murder you. Unsurprisingly, the type of player that invades other players' worlds is typically a Souls vet, equipped with strong equipment and the best known weapon skills. Even worse, many of these players will intentionally keep their character level and weapon upgrades low, so they'll be matched with new and inexperienced players. During my first playthrough, I'd occasionally team up with a friend, and I recall being killed 3 times in a row at the third castle by players using weapons and skills you don't unlock until the end of the game. So the question, of course, is why would From Software allow this? Potential answers seem to include 1. By playing co-op, you're making the game easier, and for that reason, there should be a consequence. 2. The real world is both good and evil, and we want those same elements to exist in our game. 3. Even if a stronger player invades you, because you're playing co-op, it should be 2-on-1, and thus even out the odds a bit. 4. You can't be invaded while in the middle of a boss fight, so perhaps the idea was to discourage users from getting help until they were almost immediately ready to face the boss itself. In reality, none of that really matters much. The type of player who invades is generally confident in their ability to best multiple enemies and far better equipped. This player can also spend their runes before invading to make sure they risk nothing. The person being invaded might get invaded after just using all their potions to finish off a mini-boss, or they might have a ton of runes that upon losing will be extremely difficult to recover. While my friend and I were both new to Elden Ring at the time, and would later be able to defeat as many invaders as we would die to, we're both experienced video game players. Having this element as part of co-op makes it nearly impossible to get a more casual friend, or someone like my sister, to be able to play co-op with me and have an enjoyable experience. I've never before encountered a game that allows other users to murder you simply for wanting to play with your friends. And of all the odd and questionable features in this game, this is in my opinion the worst. It feels so arrogant to me that the game's designers would prevent you from making your own decision about how you'd best enjoy playing the game. And it all ties back into the theme of when is making something hard a value add and when is it not. More to come on that in my final summary, but to wrap up co-op multiplayer, I would rather have it exist in its current format than not at all. I also like that strangers can ask other players for help in defeating a tough boss, and that really adds to the community experience. I remember one time I accidentally didn't enter a password and entered the wrong co-op game. The two players whose game I joined used a prattling prate item to say, "Please help," and after dispatching the boss together with them, we all had a good time sharing congratulatory gestures before I was returned to my world. What makes co-op in Elden Ring bittersweet is that I think there was a monumental potential to make Elden Ring the best and coolest co-op game to ever exist, and that potential was largely wasted by a limited scope and what felt like a giant middle finger from the devs to their customers in the form of making invasions a mandatory element of any co-op mode.